And we're live coming to you from the very actually wet, it's been raining here for like 2 months, Permian Basin. Welcome to Tally Book Troubleshooting Live, troubleshooting ESG today with Laura Stadler. Going to be a great episode. Happy that you've tuned in. As always, I'm your host, Keith Stelter, trying to bring a little bit of positive PR to the industry, a little bit of education, getting some round tables, getting some, previews to some of the bigger shows. This one, kind of ties together with LAGCO this week. Laura's going to be talking at LAGCO this week in Lafayette, Louisiana. If you don't know what LAGCO is, go check out the episode from last week or go to lagco.org or energyfest.com. Energyfest.com, that's correct. Maybe Fumi's out there watching, who was my guest last week. Fumi, type it in the comments. Anybody else that's tuning in, type in the comments where you watch from. Love to hear where people are tuning in from. I know it's just not the Permian Basin, which I love, which I call home, that tunes in. We've had people tune in from all around the world. Like I said, this week, LAGCO, I'll be headed to LAGCO and bringing you a little bit of content this week from LAGCO. Just little interviews from people attending the show. So they can, their thoughts, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they want to see more of. LAGCO's not just going to be energy, oil and gas. Is going to be solar, wind, hydrocarbon, carbon capture, you name it, it's going to be there. As always, the show brought to you by Arc Energy. We process your energy, supplying all your vessels, DHI equipment, aiming plants. We're also looking to buy. Get a hold of us today if you got process equipment for sale. We'd love to hear from you. The boss is tuning in from Buenos Aires. Buenos dias. Good morning, boss. Thank you. Terry Nelson. Good morning. Corpus Christi. What are you doing over in Corpus? Is that where you normally hang out, Terry? I thought you were more central than that, but maybe I got it wrong. Austin Lewis. Thank you, sir. Houston. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully my wife is watching. She'll throw a comment in there. I just wanted to. Oh, there she is. As always, yes. Thank you. My lovely wife, everybody, the one who, she made this, she likes to say. So that is very true. I would not be here without her. I'd be probably still living with my dad on the farm somewhere, trying to not fight with him every day. And to that end, let's transition into someone who is looking for a job. There's a few people out there, actually. Check out last week. I have a little segment I do on Fridays, Pay It Forward Friday. Cosmo Underwood, she was looking for a job. Great posting. Thank you for all the people that supported that. Last week, we had Sonia Eichler. Sonia is back with her Minute with Sonia. We're going to bring her on here. She's going to do a little spiel to demonstrate a little bit of her abilities. If you're looking for a salesman, business development, marketing in the Permian Basin, I highly suggest you check out Sonia. Terry? Yes, sir. Office in Dallas, live in Corpus. Oh, I did not know about that, sir. Yes, she has, boss. Yes, she has. Hope to see you tomorrow. Hopefully all has gone well in Buenos Aires, sir. And without further ado, I'll stop stalling. It's probably the proper term. And bring Sonia on here. You know what? I was going to prepare graphics, but at the same time, you know what? I think Sonia's going to find a job so quick that these graphics are going to go to waste. So without further ado, let's bring on Sonia Eichler. Sonia, how's it going today?
You know what? It is awesome. Good morning, everyone. Here's the deal. You know that I've got graphics in my back pocket because
that's another ability. We'll have to talk about it and get that going. Exactly. Everybody, this is your Minute with Sonia.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, Sonia Eichler out here in Odessa, Texas. So excited to be a part of the show. Whenever Keith gave me this opportunity, I keep thinking, where do I go to pitch who I really am? So today I'm going to talk about our people. And if you have, people are our number one assets. And so many times we're talking to business owners, we're talking, where's the gap in your organization? Like, what's going on? Where do I bring the solution with a specific issue? Like whether it's out at the wellhead or whether it's within the organization, whatever the scenario is. And so today I thought I would share, if you've got a gap in your organization where there's you need the exact person to do, you've got vice president of, the operations, you've got your CEO. Well, how about the sales and marketing side of it? And so that's where my skill set comes in, is having that ability to be able to put together opportunities to make sure we are putting that right message out there of who we are, what we're about. And so, I think about organizations, we look at key performance indicators all the time in the financial side. Well, what about the key performance indicators in our people? There's not, you've got subject matter experts, right? And so I know for a fact, if you're looking at that person that's going to manage the bottom line, manage the money, I know I'm not that person. But if you need someone out there to go tell the story, who we are, how the company got built, maybe exactly what we sell, you just got to have that skill set. And I know that's what I bring to the table. And so whenever I think about, filling in the gaps, whether that is, making sure that you've got the right person to go do the job, or you've got the right person out there to go sell the job or go market the job. And, that's where I think that the opportunities lie for us to really utilize the people that we have within our teams. And if we don't have that, then network like what we're getting to do right here. Thank you, Keith, for allowing me to just share that little bit of skill set that I have, so that hopefully I will be that asset to someone. Because, all the time we're looking at, what does it look like? How do our assets all line up within a job or within the organization? And I know that's what I have the opportunity to bring to the table.
And I know you have that ability as well, Sonia. Thank you very much. You know what? I hope we don't need those graphics, because I hope you get, somebody reaches out this week and takes care of you. That's what I hope happens. So
thank you so much, Keith.
Many blessings to you. Thank you very much, Sonia. Good luck. Well, I hope you tune in and see what Laura has to say.
I'm staying on.
And without further ado, I know you don't want to hear me rattle on about ESG. You came to hear an expert, and she'll be talking this week at LAGCO. And without further ado, let's bring her on. Laura Stadler. I like how we were talking. You don't even need to put your first name on your tagline. You're that famous. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are.
Hey, everybody. My name is Laura Stadler. I'm with Frio Valley Infrastructure, which we are a privately held company in the midstream renewable sector. And I've been over the commercial as well as the ESG strategy. And I'm looking forward to speaking today about how y'all can take your first steps into that. And Keith, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. It's, one of those topics that gets a lot of discussion. It's, either on the investing side or the working side, or, is it a big deal? Isn't it a big deal? I think there's a lot of questions and curiosity about it. So thank you for coming on and giving us a little preview. This is what you're going to be talking about at LAGCO, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So without any further ado, give us the cliff notes.
Sure. So first, a little bit about myself. I've been in oil and gas my whole career, transitioned into geothermal drilling a few years back, which took me into the hydrogen and CO2 space. And that took me into the investor world and helping them understand the vertical integration of these different products to take their first steps into this renewable market. And it was all based on watching what was happening globally in the energy industry and how that's going to be affecting the US. It was a very pivotal time in history with COVID and with everything happening globally in the industry and all industries. So it was a great opportunity for the rest of the world to kind of set the tone for what they wanted, which is the hydrogen, CO2, and ammonia market. Jumped into Frio Valley and become truly a bridge between traditional oil and gas and traditional energy with the renewable market, and really filling those gaps between the two areas. Because you look at traditional oil and gas who's trying to figure out, how do we get into this renewable market? What is this ESG? How do we play in this ESG role? And the renewable market also trying to figure out the ESG role, as well as how do we commercialize everything that we have successfully piloted or done at a small scale, and now they're getting a ridiculous amount of money to commercialize, and they're having a hell of a time trying to do so without oil and gas professionals, because they truly understand the entire vertical of getting things done from the beginning all the way to the end, and what the kind of risks that you're going to be mitigating, all those kind of things. So really on my side, when I'm commercializing these projects, for example, we have a very large CCS project, in West Virginia right now. And with that being
Can you
said,
tell everybody who might not know what's CCS?
so carbon capture sequestration. So storing the CO2 underground in a large formation. But with that being said, for us to decarbonize that infrastructure, we can't do it by ourselves. So we like to own and operate pipelines in the facilities, but we have to have everyone that we work with on the service side be ESG compliant, meaning, do they understand ESG? What are they doing about it? Are they decarbonizing? Do they have anything that we can help them see that they are compliant? And will they work with us on getting those measurements and metrics so that we can have that as an addition to our ESG? And so that's what I want to go into today is how do you become an ESG partner or ESG compliant and take those first steps and be confident in those first steps when you're talking to somebody on the operator side and who's someone you need to partner with in the future. And how to really find them, how to put yourself out there, what's okay, and why it's a huge advantage, as well as I believe a lot of people are getting frustrated with ESG and saying, no, I don't want to do it. It's bullshit. You're done. And it's okay. I understand how you feel, but on the same note,
Could it be just because of the way some of the phrasing, like in the end, isn't ESG really just corporate, responsibility at the end of the day, like doing what's right? Like at the end of the day, we don't want to be wasteful. We don't want to pollute. We want to utilize all the resources best we can. Like it's really just a fancy way of doing the right thing, isn't it?
It sounds like that, but on the same note, it's truly something that can be measured. And it's something that, every energy, phase of energy has had some type of theme, right? So I remember one of the first themes was, a long time ago, was, okay, you got to be green. Well, that failed miserably. Nobody knew how to be green. That wasn't easy because then there was greenwashing and that blew up in everyone's face. And then there was, let's be sustainable. Well, there was no proof of being sustainable and people were coming up with their own ideas of what sustainability was. And so ESG really provides a ground in every industry to start leveling the playing field of, being able to report 3 different sections, right? So instead of just the environmental, in which a lot of people would be able to say, well, we bought, $1 million worth of solar and we're good, right? Or it was, we planted a bunch of trees. We even had a day of planting trees. It was really nice for marketing. We're not doing that anymore.
Could you, like I have a few people I know tuning in from a few different industries. Can you quickly just go, what does ESG stand for? Like,
right. So ESG is environmental, social, and governance. So you're going to be looking at the environmental investing that a company can do and what these investors are wanting to invest in for the environmental side. You've got the social side, which is really getting into, how are you truly handling both the community as well as your inside house, right? So how are you helping your employees? Are you helping them succeed? Are you helping them with the diversity and really initiating these things? And then the governance, what your proper governance is, which all of them kind of relate to each other. They all have to do with really kind of following through with each side and phase of the ESG. And so what's nice about that is that a lot of people might not be able to prove the E right now. They might not be able to capture their CO2. Right. But on the S and the G and on the social, they're providing education on what that environmental factor is that they want to bring into their daily operations. Their G and their governance is going to be that their board is also integrating this into all of the risk and different strategies of the actual commercial strategy of the actual contracts and really bringing it forward and setting the goals and setting the tone for the next year of what their plans are to decarbonize or to whatever it might be on the environmental side.
Does it have to be decarbonizing? Like, for instance, let's look at Tesla. Tesla builds cars they run on, electricity. They're battery powered. But at the end of the day, they're not capturing any carbon. They're saving their end user carbon. but they still produce carbon making those cars. Does that make sense? So in the end, does it have to be capturing carbon, or can it be supplying an end user a carbon reduction?
So they're looking for carbon reduction, and they're looking for it. This is an integrated process. Nobody can decarbonize everything they do. It's just not there yet. And looking at it from that tone, you're looking at, are you trying to help control pollution? Are you doing anything on the waste and recycling side? Are you doing anything with trying to utilize your water efficiently? Are you doing anything to recycle that water? Are you doing anything to help the local community with their environment? Are you doing anything to say, look, you know what, we're doing X, Y, and Z to get these batteries made. We understand the implications of that, but here's what we're doing next year. Here's what our goals are for in 5 years, and here's our goals in 10 years. Now, they can't just say those are our goals. They actually have to show proof of what their next steps are to meet those goals, because people like the SEC are coming in with their own standards to measure those goals as well and make sure that you're following through in good faith and not just greenwashing. And so, for example, on the lithium side, when you're talking about the electric side and all that, is typically it's open pit mining. Today, there's been huge breakthroughs in the last 5 or so years where now you can do it through wells. You can look over the Arkansas Smackover project. It's right up north of us in Texas, and they're pulling out more lithium underground through basically a geothermal process, and it's extremely safe. It's much better than open pit mining, and that was part of their goals. And now they're expanding that operation in the United States and Canada. So there's different steps to all this. There's different arguments to all this, but nobody can cover all of it. There's always, in my opinion, there's always going to be some type of carbon that's going to be emitted, some type of greenhouse gas, but we can do the best that we can by at least admitting where we are. And that's the goal, is kind of admitting, look, we're not truly decarbonized here, but we're working on it. And this is how we're working on it. And you can hold us to it because we're stating it publicly of how we're going to try to do this.
We got a question that came in here, and before we keep on going, let's try and see what LinkedIn users. So LinkedIn user comes up because their settings are on private. And I apologize if my sound's coming in choppy. But Laura, does your company measure greenhouse gas emissions? If so, what protocol are you using to do it? And do you help companies determine the scope 1, 2, or 3?
So that's a great question. There's quite a few that you can go by. For our company, personally, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be utilizing a third party for that, as well as we have a strategic partner who I can't name publicly right now, but they have their own system that they utilize, and we'll be going through them. And they've been utilizing them for quite some time. So there are specific ones that you can go through. You can Google the top ones, and I can send. You can send it out if you'd like, a little pyramid of which ones to utilize, because there's 3 different levels that you can utilize.
Perfect. We covered the S. Can we talk more about the G? I get a lot of questions on the G, and from my understanding, the G, the governance, really is how your board is, formed, and the checks and balances within the company, so that one man or one group really, can't just push through whatever policies they want to. They have to go through a certain check, and if they don't meet certain requirements, they basically don't get pushed through.
Right. So the governance side, you're looking at board diversity, bribery and corruption, making sure you have those policies in place. What's your ethics for both the board and the executive management, and what they'll be trickling down into the rest of the company. What kind of lobbying you're doing in the political lobbying? What does that look like? What are your policies there? What is your belief system? Looking at the procurement practices, as well as resilience and risk management. So the risk part is one of the biggest ones that you really have to have a strategic risk policy, looking at how do you look at the operational risk to de-risking every piece of your operation from the beginning to the end. What's your risk policy over time on your facilities, or with, and then going back to the board, it's how the governance is. So basically, the basics are: is there board diversity? Is there any type of inequality in there? Can you fix it? Is there anything there for the how are they? What are the procedures for the board? How often do they meet? Where do they meet? What do they talk about? What are the ideals of them? What are the goals set by the board? And how are they looking to be progressive in those goals for the company?
Excellent. Oh, that's a great explanation. So we've kind of got all over the place here. I'm sorry, but that's amateur video for you. I'm not the the best guider of the ESG story here.
Well,
Getting back to what you wanted to talk about, or people to come listen to at LAGCO. Is there anything more you want to
sure.
preview that you'll be speaking about?
Sure. So I'll be talking about kind of how you set up your process to kind of get started. For example, what's your strategy? Start to consider your stakeholder risks, highlighting your strengths and vulnerabilities, defining your vision and your goals, getting into the engagement side, and starting what are your initiatives in ESG? What can you focus on first as a near-term goal, as a long-term goal? What do you have that you can provide as a foundational partner? That's one of the biggest things that foundational partners are extremely critical right now in this industry. And what I mean by that is that, like, for example, someone like Arc Energy, y'all had, we're just starting to figure out the ESG side, and it was, what do we have to offer? Well, y'all have a safety record that is extremely important to the renewable industry. When you're dealing with all these startups or companies that might have a lot of capital and assets, but they don't have years worth of safety records, and they don't have years worth of projects to go by to explain that they have, X, Y, and Z done, they need a foundational partner to come through and say, hey, we're going to be ESG compliant, as in your ESG solution, because we're going to be able to provide you metrics and measures for your ESG. Just let us work with you on what do you need. Do you need a safety record? Great. Let's partner so that you can utilize us as your foundational partner for your safety, so that you can start winning some of these different bids out there. And then on top of that, it's part of the ESG strategy because you're showing growth in a company. You're showing growth and progressive movement in that industry as well. And then starting to also define, get down more into the definition of your ESG so that you can define these different initiatives, their goals, what's your cost and safety, and what's, what can you assess in your project development so that you can keep those on the table when you're talking to these different potential partners. And then at the end, you're solidifying and really syncing your ESG with operations, putting that vision and initiatives into daily operations and into your governance and all of that. So that's going to be one big part of what I'll be talking about, kind of that early planning. And then going into types of goals you can go and really kind of focus on. The reporting baseline, that's going to be really big. So you're looking at your governance. What's your board and executive oversight of climate-related risks and opportunities? What's the management role in risk assessment and management? What does that look like on a daily basis in your meetings of who's going to be talking about it, who's going to implement it, who's going to really go forward with looking at what a project looks like, now what does it look like with the ESG, and looking at a timeline for your risks and opportunities. What's that impact on business and your strategy and planning? And then also looking at that resilience of strategy to the climate scenarios and being able to provide that feedback to your team, as well as possibly if you're dealing with investors or partners. And then going into the risk management and then the metrics and the targets, which that's where the metrics and targets, you're becoming, again, you are going to be compliant in a solution. Doesn't mean you have to go out and spend $200,000 on getting someone to come in and report it for you. It's simply saying to someone, let's say you want to work with Shell. Hey, Shell, look, here's what we're planning to do. This is what we have. Here's what we can help you measure. By the way, this is how we can boost your ESG, because we know, for example, like at Arc Energy, hey, we can, what do you guys call it? Remanufacture equipment. And that's recycling. So instead of going over to China or wherever it is and doing all the shipping, We can do it right here in the States. We have it here. You're decarbonizing shipping. You're doing all kinds of things. We can help
Yeah, you don't have to resmelt steel. We
Right.
take the old and make it new. Yeah, and
That's an
save
ESG
some
strategy.
time and some money.
Right. So it's not dumb iron. It's an ESG solution to an operator. Hey, we can help you trim this up right now. So there's groups out there like Project Canary. You can look them up. They came out with like 600 different points for upstream to follow as a point system where they could be gold, silver, bronze, and then they do their assessment. And these companies like EQT, let's say, or Range Resources, they get to be a silver. And they're like, okay, well, we want to be gold. How do we get to be gold? So then Project Canary comes through and says, well, we know that Arc Energy, or we know that Power, or we know that X, Y, and Z company has these different components that would allow you to be more mobile or decarbonize X, Y, and Z in your operations to take you to the gold standard. And so that's where you want to fit in. Where can you be thrown in to help companies truly progress what they're doing in their ESG?
And is that how, that's one way to get in the door? You talked about, you have a project where, you're doing the carbon capture and you're vetting companies with ESG. Maybe there's a local contractor that has no ESG history or program or experience. Is one way for them to get in the doors, to team up with maybe a company that does nothing that they do, but has a great ESG record, and then team up with them. Is that one way to somehow partner up and start getting in the door? Or is that not quite where you're?
I'm looking at, so like, for example, one of our biggest strategic partners, they have an amazing ESG strategy. They're doing ESG reporting. They've got their metrics. They've been doing it, I think, for 2 years now. They're able to pay for those measurements to be done. And then we are considered in this partnership an ESG partner of theirs. And so basically what we're saying is, we agree to your ESG terms. We agree to what you want to measure. We are going to be capable, and we're going to work with you. And that's the best thing you can do from any size company that you are, especially if you're trying to work with somebody. I wouldn't say you necessarily have to partner with another service company or somebody to get that, but it's better to find someone that you want as a customer that needs ESG to say, hey, we really value your ESG strategy. We believe that we can be of value to your ESG by providing you measurements, metrics, and being able to work with you on what do you need. Because some of these companies, they're coming in, like for example, for a couple of our other projects, we're coming into some hiccups where it's, okay, well, how do we measure the trucking on here? How do we measure, what this could look like in 5 years? Or how do we measure the, just it's like the basics of what the service companies are doing for governance. And if a service company says, I'm not going to provide you what we do behind closed doors, we're not going to provide you with the pricing or whatever it might be, well, I can't work with you then, because I have to be transparent and I have to work with people that are going to provide ESG measurements based on what I need, because I'm going to have a specific ratio or specific initiative where I'm going to be asking you for specific data. And if you tell me I can't get that data or work with me on, hey, I can't give you this, but I can give you something else, I can't continue to work with you.
Makes a lot of sense. No, I kind of get a little bit more idea of the process. Where was I going to go? We've talked huge, the E, the G. What about a little bit? Can you touch a little bit more on the S? Sorry for the echo. I'm not sure what I got going on with my sound.
I don't know. Is it me? Let's see if I can move this and make it better.
Probably me. The problems between the keyboard and the chair here.
So the social side is kind of the basics of the inequality, the diversity, and having more equality versus the inequality, and kind of going on that basis, following the employee relations, environmental justice, the safety of how you're doing your operations, because that's how you're caring about your employees and the local community, which also provide that's where you kind of connect into the governance and environmental side as well, with providing a backbone to that. So health and safety, human rights, non-discrimination, security, and training and education. Are you training your employees? Are you training the local community? Are you helping with, right now with the new IRA, which is the Inflation Reduction Act, to get some of those benefits out of that act is that you're going to have to provide local support. Basically, what's the quality of life? Are you helping that quality of life? Are you connecting disconnected communities? Can you prove that? And what are you doing on your own side, on your company, to help mitigate that and help provide more value to those different impacts on the community side, as well as internally, what's the impact on your employees? Are you helping them educate themselves more so that they can educate others? Are you going into, do you have weekly meetings on diversity, on harassment, on all those things? Are you providing the proper resources for your employees to be able to have? You have health insurance and benefits for your employees, etc. Many times. Okay, so the money ties to ESG. Yeah, so ESG is going to be your key, and pretty much, I'd say 90% of all investors I've worked with in the last few years, especially in the last few years, whether it's the very first question they ask you, hey, what's your ESG strategy? Or you get all the way almost to the finish line, and their decision maker is, what's your ESG? I want to see it. And if they don't see it, you can't work with them. They're not going to drop the money on you. Because as much as the US might not be highly focused on ESG, or whether or not you think it's important or not, the top investors worldwide, international relations, the stock markets, everybody is demanding it. And they're looking for the metrics, the measurements to truly provide a true investment strategy for the long term to prove their decarbonization and not get pushed to the side again.
You mentioned earlier in the show, some people are kind of against the ESG push. I heard once, Governor DeSantis saying like they were going to push back against this. What is some of the pushback reasons, and is it, where do you think that's going to go, in your little humble opinion? If you have one, or if not, no worries.
In my humble opinion, I think, we're going to go through the next 2 years are going to be really interesting with the political side of the world. You're going to have people trying to gain votes. You're going to have people trying to gain, the industrial side of trying to help them relieve them of anything that they might have to do, like something like ESG. You're also looking at a very unstable global market that's demanding energy left and right. But on the same note, no matter what we do, ESG has been around for quite some time, and it's not going anywhere. It's going to be a framework that people can utilize as their first steps, as well as their continued progression in business. It's highly intertwined in investment already. It's, a lot of people immediately, I think, assume that ESG means that they're going to get taxed on things. They're going to get punished for things. They're going to have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in reporting and all this stuff. But if you really take a step back and look at it as an opportunity of how do I enter ESG safely as a beginner? And that's okay to be a beginner, especially when you have a company that's been around for 20 or more years, 5 or more years. That's fantastic. So being able to go in confidently with what you can do and what your team provides to say, look, we're new at ESG, but we're walking into this with you. Right now is the best time to take advantage of ESG because there has not been a standard set for ESG yet, but it's coming within the next year. The SEC is creating their own standard. Once that happens, now you're going to have to take a bigger leap of trying to figure out how to hit their requirements. Where right now you're safer by saying, we're taking our first steps in. Here's what our ESG strategy is. If there's a standard coming next year, you're prepared, you're ready to take on that next standard.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I agree wholeheartedly. It's here to stay. I don't think it's here to hurt anybody by any means. I want clean water. I want, fair play in the workplace, just like I think a lot of people do. So in the end, I think it's, as long as you're making the effort and going forward, I think it's a good thing. Now, I hope it doesn't become something that, gets shoved down some people's throats to where, these businesses that have been around for a long time, end up suffering for it. But like you said, if you're making the effort going for it now, I think there's a lot of opportunity, like you said, to get to the forefront and separate yourself. Like, there's lots of companies that offer the same, exact thing that you can get off the shelf. It's one way to be a differentiating factor, in my opinion.
Right. It's truly a team effort, in my opinion. You have to collaborate to have ESG. And ESG kind of covers, instead of going into, well, what's your environmental policy? Are you green? I hate that question because nobody can just be green. It's not economic to just be green. It's not reliable. When you go into what's your diversity and inclusion strategy, well, my point is we're going to keep going down this list of all these different little things that companies are supposed to be, and it turns into, are you a liberal? It's like out of nowhere, you're like, okay, now how did that even get to that point? Where ESG is very much a bipartisan viewpoint of, like, here's what you need, here's the 3 sections. Where do you fit here so that we can put you in line in your project, in your operations, which means you're working with somebody typically, right? So how are your partnerships? How are you creating a truly economic, circular, and sustainable operation here? What's this business like inside and outside? Because you're also de-risking your business by saying, this is what we provide. This is what the operation looks like. Here's what's happening outside of it, and here's our partners. Now it goes to the partner of, this is what we provide. So it constantly creates this movement in business for that environmental factor, for that social and governance factor. So in my opinion, if you can just put yourself out there, accept the ESG, don't go all out and say that you're going to have to go get all these different reporting mechanisms and spend $1 million. Just take your first step to say, look, I get it. We're taking our first steps. Let's see where this goes.
Question from Mike Jeffers. Are all ESG efforts economical for every company? Seems depends on how you approach that.
It does. So it's a great question. There are some things that are economic, and there's some things that are absolutely not economic. But those are the things that you can be upfront about in your goals. Hey, we've got project X. We want to do X, Y, and Z to decarbonize. And if we have the correct approval through our governance process and it's economic for our company in this project, we will do it. Meaning, hey, investors, do you want to pay an extra X, $1 million to decarbonize this, 20-mile pipeline? Is that going to be important? Can we make money off of that over time? Will we get a return on this investment with the ESG strategy here, or do we need to do this in our next project? And is that a goal for us to have as a reliable economic resource in the future? Is that something we have to work on?
I agree. Great answer. Any other questions out there for Laura? Give it a minute. So when is your talk at LACO? What day?
Thursday morning at 9 a.m.
Thursday morning, 9 a.m. So if you're in Lafayette, Louisiana, Thursday morning, 9 a.m., come listen to Laura Stadler talk about ESG and how to either get started, team up, and get the process rolling, and why you should, correct?
Yep. Sounds good.
Excellent. Well, they're either slow to the draw or, there's a question.
I think you should be able to look at all greenhouse gas emissions, carbon, methane. Can you utilize any of it? Can you make it into a sustainable operation? I'm helping a coal company right now look at their methane emissions as a means to, look, they're going to have methane emissions. Not much they can do about it, but what they can do is they can capture it and utilize it and pump it into a pipeline and make sure it doesn't leak. And then looking at the carbon side, how can you decarbonize? what are some things that you can utilize? What kind of company are you? Are you emitting, thick streams of CO2 where you can go look at and call Arc Energy to figure out if you've got a processing system, like an amine system to throw onto it? Can you utilize that CO2 for something? Is it something that you want to look forward to in a year or two by finding a strategic partner that can capture it and utilize it? Is there something where you can, instead of taking 10 trucks a day somewhere, you can throw it on a barge, or can you do something else? Can you build a pipeline instead of utilizing the trucks so you can decarbonize the road? You have to have the proper governance and processes and looking at your risk and how you're going to mitigate all of that in your company. And that's part of your ESG strategy.
Well, at least to your end user, right? Because at the end of the day, even if, like you mentioned, Arc, we recondition this equipment, it still takes carbon to do that. But when we pass that vessel and that end user has made that choice to use that, that reconditioned vessel over having us build them a new one, they've saved a ton of carbon, right? In the end, Arc Energy actually didn't, capture any carbon in doing that, but it did pass that on, that choice to the end user, right? So I think a lot of people get hung up, wondering what I can do for like right here, but it's in the whole circular of the process. I think as long as you're contributing, you're in the ESG movement and you're applying a solution that in the end reduced overall carbon, correct?
Right. That's absolutely spot on.
Okay. And Mike is, he's in the reduction and combustion side, so that's, important to them. I think, isn't there, as far as a greenhouse gas, isn't methane more,
it's pretty bad.
It's worse than CO2, right? So if you can reduce methane, like if you can only choose one to reduce, methane is the choice. Is that basically, am I correct? And you want to do both, but in the end, isn't methane?
Right. Now, the big thing right now is, there's going to be a methane tax coming, but on the same note, there's 45Q. So you're going to make money right now on the CO2 side. Now, if you want to also look at the methane reduction through hydrogen and blending hydrogen into it, and you do the pre-combustion capture versus the post-combustion capture, now you're looking at a whole different way of, again, really mitigating that greenhouse gas emission by bringing in something that can decarbonize over time, or show at the upfront where that decarbonization happens. 800%. Take that.
That's what he was getting at. Yes, Mike, we know the methane is bad. That's what BRUs and a whole bunch of other equipment out there is going to help reduce a lot of these emissions, and they're doing a lot more checking than they ever have before. So with gas prices being where they at, I think it's economical to do so, I believe.
Well, and you got to look at, oil and gas is going to be here for a very long time. And if anyone tells you different, they need to get their head out of the ground. And when you really look at what it's all utilized for, and oil and gas can truly create other things. That's the biggest difference between wind, solar, geothermal, all those things, and oil and gas. You can't refine all that. But
we need more energy, not less of it, right? So I welcome all the solar, the wind, all the different energies. The population's growing, the demand for energy is increasing all the time. We need it from wherever we can get it.
And we need to build bigger, more than what we need right now, which is where hydrogen fits in. Like, for example, the wind investors, they're very excited about hydrogen because hydrogen just de-risks their liability of overpowering or having different peak shaving problems. So instead, that's going to go towards making hydrogen to store power for a longer period of time. But we've got to build more renewable sources and have it ready for the next generations to come. And it's going to take quite a bit of emissions right now. But if we start building what we need to decarbonize in the future, if we can all think about what this does for the future, then we need to build it now and just continue to find ways through ESG, through your own process.
Oh, the technologies coming out are amazing. I had, one I keep bringing up because I thought it was just amazing. There's a little company that makes modular refineries. And, they're small enough where they don't need federal permitting. They could be placed like right here in the Midland, or Permian Basin, be set up so you don't need a pipeline. And the technology and the carbon capture technology, it produces 95% less CO2 than a traditional refinery, right? So you don't need a pipeline. You're making it here locally. Like you can set up some of these in some big urban areas so that you're not piping in back and forth or trucking, and you could supply the local population with fuel. I don't know why it's not a little bit bigger. Like when I heard about them, these guys talk about it, they do it in all parts around the world. You know, I was like, man, some of these guys should take a look at this. Like a small footprint. You know, we're not talking massive. They're not going to supply all the, you know, state of Texas with fuel. But if they set one up right here in Midland, they could clearly take care of the Midland Basin, or then set one up in Dallas, you know, for, you know, utilize the Barnett. And I think some of the technologies for, you know, some of the flare capture and the produced water that they can clean up, it's just amazing what's out there right now if you really want to take an interest in it. Robert Gomez, I'd love to visit with you on your product, how it fits the whole ESG initiative. How receptive have companies been in your experience so far, percentage-wise?
Very, I'd say 100% receptive.
That's why she's so famous, Robert. That's why she only has to put Stadler there. Terry, true return of investment is doing the right thing, focusing on ESG. Once again, you know, I believe it's just kind of corporate responsibility. Do the right thing. Like, you know, ESG is measurable, but at the end of the day, like, I don't want to be polluting the ground or anything unnecessarily. And why waste? You know, we only have so much resources, but let's use it. We need more energy, not less. So
That's right.
if there's not any more questions out there, I'll give you like 5 seconds to throw in another question. Otherwise, Laura, thank you very much. Look forward to hearing your talk on Thursday morning. And you're in Houston right now. When are you heading to Lafayette?
Good question. Sometime tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Not getting there early. I get it. Yeah. I'm flying out later this afternoon from Midland out to Lafayette. So
Nice.
hopefully no planes are delayed, and I'll get there on time and start joining the fun, I guess. Enjoying the
My
food.
little
Look
man's
forward
got
to it.
football, so I've got to make sure I see him play, and then I'll get out of here.
Excellent. Well, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And till we meet, I will run into each other at Lafayette at Energy Fest. LAGCO, if anybody doesn't know about it, it's 19th, 20th, 21st, Lafayette, Louisiana. And until next time, guys, that's how you troubleshoot.
Thank you.